first, congrats.
Well,
I love the film.
Thank you. Good.
In particular, the opening scene. I'm a huge World War II movie fan anyway, but that just set the tone and sort of gave me chills in a way that I wouldn't expect for this kind of movie in the way it opens.
Well, in a couple, when I first came on the, thank you. When I first came on the movie, one of the things, reasons I wanted to do it is Macquarie had mentioned. There's a very kind of quick mention of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in his drafts, but I kind of had this feeling, both with what had happened with the tsunami, and also in a way, I so loved the way the original X-Men opened and the concentration camp sequences, and I felt like the kind of finding of in a movie that was going to contemplate, which was my goal when I came on, Logan's immortality, placing him in some sense in that kind of Zelig Gumpian way in history is really useful. Placing is really useful in some way to help you understand how much he has seen and how much he's endured. But also, by the way, I think it was a statement for me about the movie you're about to see. That we're taking something that hardcore and putting it on the screen in the first minute.
Yeah, that's what I felt. I want to ask, and I feel like you have heard this question a lot, but I have to ask, how much changed and what was different from the Darren version and what was originally in the works before you got on board?
Well, I mean, I can't speak to what was in the works, but I mean, I don't think Darren was on very long. I mean, I think I think he did a quick pass with Chris, a script Chris had done before Darren had come on, but I think that the reality is I'll take good ideas that come from anywhere, but the ideas I came onto the project with were essentially doing Claremont Miller, but also trying. I felt like there were two things that need to be addressed in Claremont Miller. One was a slight dated way that the female roles were portrayed, kind of as just damsel in distress.
Right.
And I thought Yukio was underutilized in a way that I thought we should really get behind more. And but also I felt like there was something. The initial instinct when I read the script, even though it was clearly written otherwise, was that it took place in my mind as I was reading it after all the X-Men films. And which always helped me when I read Claremont Miller kind of understand what he's doing out of the Yukon. That wasn't what people were thinking. It was more of a straight sequel to Origins, occurring with him in an amnesic state, trying to figure out what's happened to him and who he is. Which, frankly, I just felt 100% that I've seen enough movies that people can't remember who they are. And a lot of them. I mean, not just comic book movies, but just a lot of wonderful movies, but just the act of someone piecing together photographs and snippets and things people say. I just felt like it's been done and done and done again. And especially because we know who he is, it's maddening. I mean, at least in Memento, you don't know what he's going to find out. I'm like, you're Wolverine, you're a mutant, they fucked with you, they gave you a skeleton inside. It's like, come on. And so I felt like I just didn't feel that was going to play. And that was all baked in a little bit to what was there. My idea, what I wrote on the back of Chris's draft, was I wrote, anyone I love will die. It was the first 5 words I wrote on the back of the script. And it was contemplating this idea that really as much for me from the comics and from Logan's existence also comes from things as disparate of Wings of Desire, Wim Wenders' film, and Isaac Asimov's The Bicentennial Man, just different references to me where there's a really interesting contemplation of what it is to be immortal and how painful it is to be immortal. And I somehow in my own mind married that to the idea that you've lost the X-Men, you've lost your mentor in Professor X, you've lost your love, in fact, by your own hand. So now what are you going to do and where do you go? And that idea of finding Logan in that kind of distress, haunted, living in the woods, made more sense to me as a launching point.
I like that you were able to keep it in the X-Men movie universe that we know, but not in a way that it's blatantly there, but also in a way that, I have to say it, disregards a couple of the recent movies and yet keeps it sort of connected to X2 in a way.
I took what was useful for us. I mean, and I also took advantage, I think, very bluntly, of the change in locale to change the tone a little. To change a lot of things. I mean, there were very, part of the reason I wanted Logan so shaggy in the beginning of this movie is that I could then trim him up to something that didn't look so damn wiggy.
Right.
You know, that didn't look like he was in an 80s rock band, Flock of Seagulls or something. I felt like there was a chance to really just bring him into... There's something that happens, you know, when the series first started, and then when you get someone who's this comfortable in the role and audiences are this comfortable with them, you don't have to go to such extremes to kind of allow the audience to see the character in him.
Right. We already know this guy.
We know he's the guy. And so the hair can be a touch. It doesn't have to look, you know, it doesn't have to look like Hardy Boys or something, or a feathered hair from an 80s TV show.
Yeah. Who, at this point, is the ultimate guide for Wolverine? Is it Hugh? Is he the one driving it? Or do you bring in Frank and Chris Claremont? And do you...
It was just us. I mean, in this case, it was just us. Just kind of doing what we thought would please us. And in turn, I felt like most of my agenda was the agenda of most fans. I mean, I can't... Fans are impossible to unite, as is any giant demographic. I mean, people... You can get together 10 Wolverine fans and have a great argument. What are the best narratives? What are the best looks? Who are the best artists that drew him? So, given that you can never get 100% unanimity, I felt like the one thing that was universal was a desire for more edge, for more anger, for getting underneath him a little more psychologically, and for more realism in a way. Just a little less quippiness and a little less feeling that everything was shot on a soundstage with wires and a lot of green screen. And that became kind of my central goal, was to try and make, I mean, what I told you the first time I spoke to him about it was just Outlaw Josie Wales. I didn't want to make a kind of epic. I wanted to make a kind of the opposite of an epic. What would a kind of noir picture or a kind of samurai picture following a very specific character be like if it wasn't under this pressure to put a city or a continent or a planet at stake? And the more I thought about it, the more I worked on it, I realized how rare it was in the context of these movies that they don't have wildly disproportionate stakes. But it only kind of confirmed my confidence about it on a weird level that we were doing something right. At least whether it would turn out okay, I didn't know, but that the North Star we were following was all right. What I mean by that is that I read comics as a kid, and I read comics all the way through high school and into college. And the one thing that always seemed true to me was that what was attractive about them to me, especially as a young man, is that they were adult. It wasn't that they were childish. And it struck me in the broadest sense that what generally happened in an effort to make movies of comic books is that it wasn't actually the level of violence. It wasn't really the question whether they're R or PG-13, nearly as much as just whether they're kind of made more infantile, or whether they're allowed to be adults. And that my goal here was to just allow the themes to be adult, allow the themes to be about death, about eternity, about, our purpose here on Earth, our goals, whether love is worth living for, questions that I don't think are outside the realm of what we read in comics. In fact, the rarity to me, in my comic reading as a young man, I was both a DC and a Marvel fan, was that almost, it was only once a year that the fate of the Earth was at stake in almost any comic line. It wasn't that every week there was another journey in which the whole world dies if our hero doesn't do this or that. So I felt like, well, wouldn't it be nice to see a film where that isn't the case, where it's not, where thousands won't perish? Long way to answer your question.
No. I was saying that's a relief to see, especially in this summer amidst all the other superhero movies. I think that's why I like it so much, in the way you presented everything. I want to ask you were talking about this a little bit in sort of making it real, but I have to ask about the bullet train sequence. I kept wondering, how the hell are you shooting this? How did you pull this off?
Oh, it is mostly green screen.
Okay.
It's kind of not possible to do any other way. But
Right.
I mean, because you're moving at 300 miles an hour.
Right, exactly.
And shooting in Japan is hard enough without strapping a movie star to the side of a bullet train. But the reality of how you do something like that and try and make it feel more real. You still have, even when you're dealing with green screen, have a set of goals you have to wrestle with, and I tried to kind of, whatever movie I'm directing, I try, instead of just saying no, yes, I try and get some kind of I try and evangelize some set of general goals that the whole creative crew can follow. One of them in this would be, we can't put the camera where we couldn't put the camera. Meaning that the greatest temptation when you start shooting in a CG universe with a green screen is there's that temptation to start flying the camera through a cup of coffee and out a keyhole and up a drinking straw and under a door. Because you can, because you know it's all getting painted anyway. And oh, since they're already doing this, then it'll cost no more to do this.
Right.
And there's this kind of natural, almost snap-to grid or gravitational pull that starts to make the work get fruitier or more CG. Just because you can, because the world is getting painted at that point. And my goal was somehow to resist that and then kind of indoctrinate everyone, including the VFX people, that I wanted it to look like you know, Queens Boulevard in The French Connection. I want it to look, where would the camera really be? If we could really do this, where would the camera be? And if we're doing a follow shot, then we must be in a parallel train looking from the other tracks. If we're on the train, then the camera needs to be as if it were bolted in some kind of mount to the train under high wind with vibration. Whatever it is, you process everything under the rubric of how would we really be doing it. And therefore, I can't just arm up or arm down or kind of do things that might look great, but also to me, really perceptually for an audience, eat away at your feeling that the sequence is real. You know?
I understand. I was mesmerized by it.
It's a fun sequence. We had a lot of fun putting it together.
The last thing I want to ask, you have such a diverse career, and I just want to ask, would you do more superhero movies?
I think the answer, I mean, yes, would be a quick and direct answer, but as if they presented me with the same opportunity to do something different, meaning something, it ends up one way or another being 2 years of your life. So you kind of don't, it's nice to make money and it's nice to make movies with bigger budgets, but it's also, I've come to the end on this picture feeling really solid about what Hugh and I did and what we tried to do. Like, it's less about what, ultimately you have to be at peace with what you bit off to try and do before people react and box office decides anything. And I feel really good about the ambition that we took on it, and if I had another opportunity to attack a similar character or the same character or another, but there was that kind of, that freedom where you didn't feel like you're, you know, a lot of these projects, and I mean, I've been around a while, a lot of them, you end up talking as much about what you're locked into from the previous films or even the one they're planning next. So that, and not only that, but merchandise tie-ins, the things they want to see, the action figures people want to move. So it's a very complicated world, and to say that this movie, we were free on this movie, we were. And and that was, that was the real, that would be my only hesitance about making a film like this again, is if that weren't the case.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Alex. Pleasure.